Well, thank you all for being here to help us envision Dublin. Thank you for giving your time and caring so much about your community. I'm Lindsay Weisenauer, and this is Bruce Edwards, and we are on the city's communications and public information team. And Bruce and I are the hosts of Link Ahead, the City of Dublin podcast. Most of you in this room tonight probably didn't realize that you were going to be part of our first ever podcast to be recorded in front of a live studio audience.
If there's one word we want to emphasize here tonight, it's envision. That's why we create long-range plans to ensure consistent listening to our residents, businesses, executives, civic leaders, and city employees. It's your input and ideas that help us envision a bright, thriving, and prosperous Dublin.
And so we have a group of distinguished guests, beginning with our city manager, Megan O'Callaghan. Megan was first hired in Dublin in 2014 as our public service director. She has since then overseen nearly all of the city's departments and divisions. She's also served as chief finance and development officer, chief operating officer, public works director. She's both a professional engineer and attorney, and also a proud mom of 2 kids who attend Dublin City Schools.
We also have William Murdoch, who's the executive director of the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission. Now, that's Central Ohio's regional council for local governments that provides services, funding, tools, and resources to counties, cities, villages, townships, and regional agencies.
And John Hausiel is partner and co-founder of Hausiel Levine and is regarded as one of the nation's top urban planning professionals. John has been inducted as a fellow of the American Institute of Certified Planners, and his work has garnered several national and state planning awards. I'm sure we'll add Dublin to that list here in a few years. So thank you all for being here. If we could get a round of applause for our panelists this evening.
All right, let's get started here. Let's start with the same question for each of you so we can get your unique perspectives. That question is, why do we plan? And let's start with you, Megan.
So Dublin is known for, and we have a reputation for being a very thoughtfully planned community. And that really is, I believe, what sets us apart from other communities. We plan because it provides a democratic process, for one thing. We are a democracy, and we want to make sure that the community that we build and we envision, how do you like that? The community that we envision is the community that our residents would like to live in and to work in and to recreate in. So that is what is most important to us. The community plan guides so many things that we do each and every day, from staff, boards and commissions, city council. We turn to that community plan on a daily basis for topics such as land use. When a developer comes in the door and is interested in developing in the community, we refer them to the community plan. That's the first thing that we do. We look at the community plan for services, financial. We look to the community plan to tell us what type of character the community wants to see as they work in and travel all around the community. So the community plan, as far as I'm concerned, I think it is one of the most, if not the most, important initiatives that we can undertake. And it is based on input from our residents. It ensures that we are all rowing in the same direction. And to me, and I know City Council, that is the most important thing that we can do, is make sure that we all had a say in our future and had a say in the vision. And then we all work to implement and achieve that vision. And that's how we stay successful as a community.
Thank you, Megan, for that local perspective. William, maybe you could talk about it from a regional perspective. Why do we plan?
This is the moment you want to be in Central Ohio. This is the moment you want to be in Dublin. There's so much opportunity. There's so much growth. There's so much change happening. And when you face something like that as a community, you want to make sure that you're making that growth work for you. We like to say we want to grow better as we grow bigger. And what's exciting and why we plan is the way that you make sure you have a high quality of life and you pay attention to the environment and transportation and all of those things is by being intentional about it, by talking to your residents, talking to your businesses, talking to people of all ages and diversity to make sure that you are getting the feedback so that it's a process to really improve your community. Dublin is so fortunate to be in a place like this. And I think it's fair to say we work with communities at Morpsey all over Central Ohio, 85 of them, and Dublin stands out in many ways because you plan and you have planned. This is a community of really high expectations. I think that's fair to say, but it's also a community of really high quality of life. And that didn't happen by accident. I know some of the folks in the room have been with Dublin the whole time, and this community just didn't happen. You planned for it, you invested in it, and you're at a moment in time where the whole region is growing. There's all these changes, and now's the right time to pause, to talk to the community, to engage national expertise and all of the great ideas that I know the folks in this room have, and make that into that next plan, so that Dublin looking forward, that you're envisioning where this community is going, so that quality of life continues to improve, that you do grow better as you get bigger. And I think there's just so much we could talk about, but planning is at the core of that. And Dublin has a history of doing it well. And this is another example of getting in front of that.
John, how about you? Why do we plan?
All right. I think at its heart, it's a pretty simple answer. And sometimes that's knowing what to do. And a lot of time it's knowing what not to do. It's what to change and what not to change. To identify the hard things that need to be addressed and overcome to improve. And it's to identify the things that are best about what you have and protect them and enhance them, and then don't change them. The future comes at us and we don't know what that's going to be, it's going to hold. So the best thing we can do is be prepared for that. And we plan for that future in a way that allows us to handle whatever comes at us. Things don't happen by accident. Dublin didn't become the community it is today by accident. It was a lot of thoughtful consideration, a lot of planning, a lot of discussions, a lot of information, a lot of thinking, and a lot of correct doing. And in the future, as we face things like local issues and regional growth pressures and national trends, we have to plan so that we're doing what is right for Dublin. And what is right for another community may not be what is right here, and vice versa. So we plan to make communities better. We plan to be prepared for the future because we don't know what is coming. And the only way we can be responsive and nimble is to plan and to be prepared, so that when challenges arise, we can take them on and mitigate them and move forward. And when opportunities present themselves, we take advantage of them, because lightning often doesn't strike twice when it comes to an opportunity. And those are bells you can't unring. A wrong development once done, you can't unring that bell. You want to do it right the first time. Decisions have consequences. So simply put, we plan to make things better, and we plan so that we are prepared for the future.
Thank you all. Great answers. And it's important to know this isn't our only plan. We're planning all of the time, but this is our biggest, most significant plan. And Megan, our last community plan update was in 2013. We've accomplished a lot since then. Can you highlight some of the things out of that plan that we've accomplished?
Absolutely. So as we prepared for this community plan update, we did go back and take a look at the engagement and the input that we heard from the community back in 2013. In 2013, it sounds like it's a long time ago. It's really not, but it is interesting to see what we heard at that time. And some of the themes or the preferences that we heard at the time, we certainly we heard a preference for parks and open space. And that is something that Dublin is known for. And since 2013, we now have Riverside Crossing Park. So that is a significant area of land that was dedicated to parkland. And we have since seen that park come to fruition and come to life. So that's exciting. We also heard a preference for multimodal transportation. And since 2013, we have created a new staff work unit called Transportation Mobility. We have a dedicated staff working on those initiatives. We have JM back there cheering. And we have embarked upon a few initiatives in furtherance of that. So we have our Dublin Connector. We have the Bird Scooter pilot in our downtown area. So those can be tied back to our community plan. You also shared a preference for transportation improvements and traffic improvements. And since 2013, we have completed Emerald Parkway. We had Section 8 that was built shortly after the last community plan. So we now have that very nice connection that cuts all the way across town from Tuttle all the way to Sawmill. So that's exciting. So those are just a few of the examples. We also heard a preference for redevelopment as opposed to outward growth. And now we have significant development, redevelopment in Bridge Street District called Bridge Park. So that has all been built since the last community plan.
Just a few things, right? Question for William. What do you see as the most influencing regional trends that Dublin needs to keep in mind? And why is it important for Dublin to work with the region and neighboring communities?
I'll actually start with the second half first. And you should all know that the community of Dublin is a leader at the regional level. And I'm not just saying that. You have an incredible city manager that other city managers are looking to for examples. Your planning staff, your transportation staff, your council, they're leading in our committees at MORPC. They're leading on regional issues. And that's so important as you're thinking about planning, because you want to make sure that you're bringing back that context from the region, the big things that are happening in the region. And Dublin certainly has its pulse on it. When you look at those issues regionally, I said this is the time you want to be in Central Ohio, and that doesn't mean that we don't face some hard things. That doesn't mean that we don't have some challenges. But all of the things that we're facing can be opportunities. Housing is a big issue. When we look at the demographics, when we look at the market, we need housing in Central Ohio of all types at all price levels. Our demographics are changing. So the housing that we built as a region over the last 30 years isn't necessarily the housing that we need or that the market's demanding going forward in the next 30 years. Dublin actually got out in front of this and was one of the first communities to do a housing study recently. That's that kind of context you're going to need to do a great plan. When we look at where the region is going, growth is something you hear a lot. And what does that mean? So our population in Central Ohio, it's growing. It's growing at a nice steady clip. So when you hear about communities like Austin or Charlotte, not to pick on them, they're growing faster than us. So they're having to plan faster. They're having to invest faster. But that growth is still real for us. And that opens up opportunities for the region to look at how we plan for transportation, how we plan for housing, how we plan for the environment, how we connect it all together. And it's really critical for a community plan to think about how you fit in that regional context, because you don't live on an island. Another thing that we're looking at is around economic development and workforce. And if you're sitting in Dublin right now, you are so well positioned because just a couple miles up the road, Honda has recommitted to their facilities and their supply chain up there. That is an incredible asset that will continue to drive the attractiveness of Dublin and the economic growth here. But also, you're less than 40 minutes from the Intel investment. And if you've been reading the news, this is Ohio's largest economic development investment in our history, and it's very close to here. When you look at those two on your east and your west, there's a lot of growth coming. There's a lot of companies coming, a lot of people coming. And what are those folks going to be looking for? Communities of high quality. And so they're going to be looking at Dublin. They're going to be looking at the Dublin area. And that's an opportunity to make sure that you're making that growth work for you, make sure you're envisioning where that community is going. So I think there's so many trends right now, but I guess I'll finish with the last one, that demographics of the growth is so important. So a lot of people say, well, who are all these people coming? And we are having significant migration to Central Ohio as a whole. Our population is going to grow from about 2.4 million to 3 million. That growth is coming from out of state, a significant portion international. So we're seeing different demographics there, but we're also seeing our population living longer. So we have to think about the needs of seniors in a different way that we haven't before. And we have to get in front of what the changing market demands are. People, when you ask them what they want in their community, they say all of the above. What kind of housing? Well, we need housing of all different types for all different ages. What about transportation? Well, your mobility department knows they want all different types of options. And I know this is a lot, but it's actually something that this Envision Dublin plan is really getting in front of and gives you a chance to think about how these regional trends connect.
And John, I'm curious, since you do this all over the country, you've been doing this for a long time, what are some of the national trends that you're seeing in other communities that might influence our planning here in Dublin?
I think the easiest way to put, when I'm trying to convey this, what we're seeing across the national landscape over the last decade or so, is for the first time ever, 24-year-olds and 64-year-olds want the same thing.
That's true.
This never used to be the case. And this is sort of anecdotal, but it's true. So people entering the job market want the same things and value the same things as those exiting the job market. And these are generalizations, but they're driving rapid change to urban landscapes across the country. People want the option to rent. They don't want to only have the option to buy. People want the option not only to buy a single family home, but they want other types of residential housings available in their community. They want to be able to walk everywhere. They don't want to have to drive everywhere, right? They would rather spend their money on experiences than buying stuff. They would rather spend their money on a really expensive bike than on a really expensive car. And these are anecdotal generalizations, but it's driving rapid changes to urban landscapes across the country. Even locally here in Dublin, you've had some housing product built that I think the developer might have thought would have been occupied and purchased by young professionals. And it was the people selling their homes and moving in as empty nesters because they want the same thing. Now, this isn't universal, and this doesn't mean that the same development or planning application or priorities are the same across an entire community. It cannot be. The value of beautiful, stable, single-family, detached, large lot, heavily wooded residential neighborhoods, there will always be a demand and a place for that in Dublin and in most communities, to be honest. But when you move beyond that, what options meet your quality of living standards, but might be a different housing option in your community? It would prevent you from having to move someplace else. This is driving the urban landscape. It's driving it rapidly. The other thing that is changing things quickly because it's, follow the money is a doubling down and a recognition of the importance that quality of life is the ultimate driver of all things in a community. There were communities across the United States that put everything into to try to attract businesses, financial incentives, tax breaks, TIF districts, all these other things. And business will often look at these communities and say, hey, your financial package can't be beat, but the quality of life just isn't there. I'm not moving my company there. I'm not starting my business there. I can't ask my employees to live there. And a lot of these communities across the country, Oklahoma City for one, Bentonville, Arkansas for another one, these are communities that a decade plus ago realized the better quality of life we can provide, we will attract business. We will attract investment. We will attract the business dollar. We will attract the employee, the entrepreneur, the young family, the new business upstart. Let's focus on bike trails, good schools, quality of life, great restaurants, walkability, public health and safety. Focus on that, and the rest will take care of itself because that's what is most important. And that is a trend that is rapidly driving urban landscapes and communities across the country, and rapidly, because if you don't change, you lose ground. And I don't mean change who you are. You can't do nothing and stay the same. Ask anybody who's getting older, all right? When you're 18, you could eat 2 pizzas, a Slurpee, 6 candy bars, sit on the couch, and you look like Adonis, right? You don't look like Adonis 40 years later if you don't do something, all right? You have to do things proactively if you want to stay who you are. If you want to hold true to the values that define what you are as a community, you have to make the strategic decisions. You have to change some things. You have to improve areas that are getting a little long in the tooth. Doesn't mean you change your DNA, what's made you great. But if you don't do something, you lose ground. You don't stay where you are if you do nothing. And these fundamental ideas of urban planning are what is rapidly transforming urban landscapes. It doesn't mean giving up who you are, not at all. It means making sure you are accommodating the needs, the desires, and the aspirations for current and future populations. And at some point, you'll be that population, right? And that's what's driving rapidly community change across the United States.
Megan, many of the people in this room may not know just how much the city council and staff use the community plan, but you use it every single day. Would you tell us more of how it's used?
First, I have to say that I was excited coming into this meeting about this community plan, but now I am pumped after hearing John's commentary. So thank you for that. Our economic development team looks to the community plan for our economic development strategies. We use it to take a look at land uses, and our community plan tells us where, for example, residential is most appropriately placed in the city or located in the city? Where is commercial development most appropriately located in the city? Where should our parks be located in the city? What natural resources should we be protecting? What historical resources should we be protecting, and how? So it really does come into play each and every day. Our boards and commissions refer to the community plan in their work, and our city council refers to the community plan. So it is the most important guiding document that we have that drives the work of the city and ensures that we are providing the best quality of life for the community.
Well, William, Morpsey held the State of the Region address a few weeks ago, great event, and a big focus was on collaborating to improve transportation. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but how does Dublin play into that?
Dublin is a leader in this space. I want to go back to the theme that John mentioned. You can't expect in the future to do things the way that you did to get where you are. The demographics have changed, the market has changed, technology's changing, and that shouldn't be scary because you already have this great sense of community. You know the quality you expect. It should be the opportunity to, like, how can we make these things really make our community shine? And mobility and transportation is a space that Dublin is really leaning into. I mean, you may be the only community in Central Ohio that has a transportation and mobility team. I mean, think about that. You've got a whole team with the word mobility, and what mobility means is transportation of all types. Yes, we'll still need roads and highways, and we've done a lot with Dublin, everything from the Post Road interchange to 270-33. But also when we talk to people around Central Ohio, when we look at national trends, the expectation is that people want all of the options. And Dublin's really well positioned for this. You know this because you already have a great shared path system and bikeway system. The region is looking how to plug into that, and Dublin has been a leader in those conversations. People want to walk places. That's something that Dublin is known for, and you're investing in that. We're also looking at things like trains and transit. And if you had a chance, if you haven't yet, at our State of the Region event, we kind of went and imagined different options for communities around Central Ohio, including Dublin. So there's an initiative called Link Us, which is looking at mass transit and technology and how that can connect Dublin to other parts of the region. We're even looking at restoring Central Ohio to the passenger rail network in the country. And Dublin has been a really loud, strong voice saying, yes, that would connect Dublin to perhaps downtown Columbus and in the other direction to Marysville on off to Chicago. Think about having that as an option where you could get on a train and go somewhere. So that doesn't even begin to get into all the smart technology that's happening up and down the 33 corridor here. But transportation will really shape this community, and where it's going is an exciting place. And this plan can really help shape how Dublin can leverage that into keeping that quality of life and giving your residents all those options they say they want.
John, we all agree that strong and attractive neighborhoods contribute to vibrant and desirable communities. What are some of the opportunities Dublin has to strengthen its neighborhoods?
Boy, there's always opportunities to strengthen neighborhoods. And the best place is to, when we get into the planning process, to really talk to residents. And sometimes you have to talk about not citywide, but talk about neighborhoods. And the reason why is it's the most tactile and experienced component or makeup of a city's DNA, right? I mean, you think of Chicago, people say like, oh, I'm from Chicago. What park? They don't give their address. They're like, oh, Wicker Park, Rogers Park, Lincoln Park, Austin. They're talking about neighborhoods because it's what they associate with. Neighborhoods also allow you to create unique differentiation so there's not this homogenous approach to a city, right? You can all be very much a part of a city and be part of a greater community, but have a very unique neighborhood. And that's what makes a city unique. Another thing we're seeing a lot in terms of a way to approach a neighborhood is through the lens of sort of public health or like a healthy community. Do I have line of sight to, visibility to, and access to nature and the environment and green? I think the answer is a big yes here, right? As an older person, can I age in place? Can I live in my neighborhood as long as I want to live in my neighborhood? Do I have mobility and access to things as I age? From a kid's perspective, can my kids bike and walk and play and safely cross streets? And are they lit at night? So from a safety and health perspective, is it good for kids? So if you look at neighborhoods in an individual mobility and a personal health type of space, You then look at things like mobility, access to food, access to nature. Can I walk around? Public safety, access to employment, all these things that make it great and safe. So if you look at the opportunities for neighborhood, you look at the things that matter most. Individual mobility. If I ask you all what was one of the most important things with where you want to live, you want to be able to walk. You want to walk in your neighborhood, walk in your city, walk to get something to eat, walk in a commercial pedestrian downtown area. 10 years ago, when we asked people to list 100 things that was important to them, you know where walkability led on that list? It wasn't in the top 100 things. Walkability was never articulated as a priority. Now it's always one of the top 5. Always one of the top 5. These are the essential things that make your neighborhood the place you spend most of your time. If you think about it as like a third place, what's your first place, all of you? It's your home. What's your second place? It's where you work. The focus now is third place. What's your third place? Where are you hanging out when you're not at home and you're not at work?
City Hall.
Right? You know, is it the local barber shop? Is it the local downtown? Is it the historic downtown? Is it the new downtown? Is it your neighborhood? Is it the local park? What's your third place? Focus on your third place and it'll change your world. You know your home, you know your work, you have little control over work unless you're the boss, right? If you're married, you have maybe some say about home, depending on who you're married to, and the kids. Where's the third place? Where do you hang out? Focus on making that better.
John, quick follow-up on that note. Since you do this all over the country, can you kind of briefly give us a few examples of maybe 1 or 2 great community plans you've been a part of?
There's a bunch for different reasons. I think 2 that stand out are on opposite, initially they would be perceived as opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of where a community is in its trajectory. The common denominator is the people that live there absolutely with every fiber of their being love where they live. One is Flint, Michigan, and the other one is Bentonville, Arkansas. All right. Flint, Michigan was shrinking. Massive economic hard conditions, high rates of poverty, crime, other things. They used to be 200,000, now they're less than 100,000. We did their community plan. In 18 months, we engaged more than 5,000 people. They were hungry to be a part of that community. And at the end, we had droves of people showing up at the city hall saying, we did our part. We helped create this. Now as city leaders, it's your part. Put this into action. Put it into play. And in the years following Flint, they got hundreds of millions of dollars of investment in the downtown and in the campus. It was a great experience. We actually come up with strategies to take neighborhoods that were going through disinvestment and came up with strategies that they would actually improve as disinvestment occurred. I can explain that later on in the hallway, but revolutionary. The other one is Bentonville, Arkansas, booming. The white hottest market to go to. What is it? Flipper Fabulous or whatever the show is on HGTV or whatever it is. We did the community plan for Bentonville, and Walton Foundation, the Walton Arts, it was a world headquarters, right? People were moving down to Bentonville, and after 3 years, they were leaving, and they couldn't retain talent. And they interviewed people who were leaving, said, why are you leaving? You've only been here 3 years. They're like, love the job, love the title, love the salary, love the resume, don't want to live in Southwest Arkansas. So they focused on quality of life. And in 10 years, they turned it around. It's one of the hottest growing markets right now. And anything we came up with, they did it. They implemented the plan's recommendations. So 2 very different communities. The end results were phenomenal.
Wow. All right. So we're going to close with the same question for each of you, starting with John. The best type of feedback a resident or community member can give is what?
Sincere and constructive. If it comes from the heart, it's not wrong to hear, right? We all have different perspectives. All of us. We all value different things. What's the common denominator? I've got to say one of them is you love Dublin and you want what's best for Dublin. How we get there may be different. So if you're going to participate, and I hope you all do throughout along the process, sincere and constructive. Everything else we can deal with.
William?
I'd say 2 things. Make it personal. And what I mean by that is think of your family, think of your children, think of your parents, think of your grandparents, think of your kids as they're graduating. When you're envisioning the community that Dublin can become, think about those folks' place in it, whether it's being able to walk to ice cream or get your first home in Dublin, or when your kids have graduated and you want to downsize, you have a place to do that. Make it personal. So it's so easy to get overwhelmed by the trends and the numbers and all of this, but think about your own life, think about your family's life and how you can envision those different at different points of their lives in Dublin. The other thing I'd just say is, don't be afraid to dream big. Just because you got to a great place right now, all of these opportunities, all of these trends that are happening regionally, the communities that are really getting in front of this are those that are taking those what might seem like super bold ideas and really looking at, wait, could we actually do this? Could we take this next leap, whether it's transportation or parks or housing or whatever it is? Don't be afraid to think big. This is the time to do that in that plan, and signal to your community leaders that you want a great place to live no matter what age you are, and you want to think about how you can really elevate Dublin and its story.
Megan?
Want to hear what you're passionate about. So your passionate ideas for what can truly improve the quality of life for you and your families in Dublin. That's really what we want to hear about. City Council, we are fortunate to have a visionary and committed city council that really, really cares about the community, and they want to make sure that this community plan is in touch with all of our residents that are here today, and they want to make sure that it's meaningful for everybody. So, think about what would make Dublin even cooler than it is today, and we'd love to hear those ideas.
All right, Megan, William, and John, thank you so much for sharing your time and expertise.
And as we mentioned, this conversation will be available as part of the City Podcast series, link ahead. Thank you for being a part of it tonight, and listen to it wherever you listen to your podcasts or on the City website.